figure out the end of the day process just to make sure we were covered. So that answers the question, and I'll get that to him. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Allison.
So Jen, can you define that the difference maybe between those contaminations, what would be considered the high biohazard?
Yeah, it's defined in the childcare regulations, and maybe Janet could answer quicker than I could, but my understanding is that blood, feces, I think blood and feces are the big ones.
Okay.
If there's any like internal body fluids, but it doesn't include like urine is considered a low hazard body fluid. And generally like drool and snot and stuff like that are not considered a high hazard body fluid. And I'm not super clear on whether it is in the age of COVID-19 or not, but I don't think so.
Okay. So we're not looking at that disinfecting process for mouthed toys necessarily. Janet, do you have anything to add to this part? I know part of it was in your recommendation too.
Hi, I hope you guys can hear me. My baby is super fussy right now. I'm so sorry.
All right.
No, yeah, what Jen said is great. The only thing for that question that I wanted to address is like if a batch of toys was like getting moved from one classroom to another classroom during the day, then they would need to go through the whole disinfection process before switching classrooms. But like in between each individual kid, a toy doesn't need to be washed, if that makes sense, unless it becomes contaminated. And then the only other thing I would add is normally like snot wouldn't be considered, you know, a super high risk, but it might be a good idea just to include it right now in that category. I haven't seen any official like, you know, changes to this, but I just feel like that could be a potential higher risk for transmission there. If a child were to like sneeze on a toy, maybe that one goes in a wash bucket and doesn't get played with till it's been disinfected appropriately.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
If we put all the toys in the sanitize cycle in the dishwasher that were played with for the day, is that effective enough, or is that not a way to be disinfecting toys?
My understanding is that counts as sanitizing, and that they want a disinfecting step at the end. So after you run them through the dish machine, you could just soak them in a disinfectant and then rinse them if they don't have a high hazard body fluid on them.
Okay, so it's just easier probably to do like wash, rinse, disinfect, rinse than it is to use the dishwasher. I mean, just for time's sake, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, you could run them through the dishwasher and then disinfect and rinse them in the morning if that makes more sense for you guys. As long as they're clean before they get disinfected, that's the really important part.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
In light of the COVID and how it spread through air particles through coughing, do we need to take special care with, for instance, if a child coughs? Do we need to think about that a little bit? It's been on my mind. If a child coughs on something, then we probably need to disinfect it. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, if a surface gets contaminated, you should disinfect it. They're really encouraging this as an opportunity to focus on teaching good coughing hygiene. So trying to teach kids to cough into their arm or to cover their cough with the tissue and then wash their hands. So that's the main goal, but do the best you can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
I wanted to add real quick before we move on to the next question. I went ahead and posted the questions from the Google Doc in the comments here, so you can take a look and see maybe if you have a similar one. But the use of like soft toys and dress up clothes, I noticed needed to be laundered in between each kid using them. So it's recommended just not to use it, right, Janet? It just seems easier because you have to wash them in between each kid using it. So what we're talking about now are toys that can be clean, sanitized, disinfected, but those ones that need to be laundered should probably be avoided. And again, sharing toys between groups, you'd have to disinfect as well. So, all right, I think let's move on to the second question. We allow, yeah.
Just interject. I just have a materials question.
Shoot.
Books. Can children handle books, or is that something only adults can handle?
Nope, children can handle books. The paper isn't a concern for transmission from what I've read. Right, Janet, anything to?
From what I was reading on the CDC's website, they're not considering books a real high concern for transmission. If it's something that you're concerned about, you know, if you just want to like have board books available that can be easily wiped down instead of, you know, paper books, you could definitely do that, but it's not necessary or recommended by the CDC at this time.
Thank you. All right, so number 2, are we allowed to do science experiments that include materials like baking soda and vinegar?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the same rules as before. Any like food kitchen items that are used in an experiment have to be labeled as do not eat. So you don't want to have your sugar that's used for science experiments also ending up in the teacher's coffee in case it gets mixed with something else. The other thing is that you want to work on like physical distancing requirements, trying to keep the children from crowding too much, and you know, just using good common sense as best as you can. Most experiments and stuff are on a case-by-case basis, so if you guys are doing any science experiments in the classroom that you're concerned about, reach out to me and I can help you make sure that they're done safely. But yes.
Yeah, it didn't seem like anything had really changed as far as that goes. It's just the distance. So maybe if we're doing a super fun, exciting thing that the whole class wants to be a part of, we're doing it outside where there's enough space for it. Katie, did you have anything to add licensing wise for science experiments? Okay, that's all pretty much the same. So for number 3, what is the procedure for lunch boxes and backpacks?
The same.
Okay.
There hasn't been any changes. Children are supposed to have designated little cubbies or spaces or something to kind of keep their items somewhat separate from other children's items, but nothing has changed for lunch boxes and backpacks.
Okay, and here I think remembering, you know, part of that in the Eckers where they're talking about, you know, our children's items touching, where are we cross-contaminating from the eating surface, from the lunchbox to the cubby. Those sort of considerations are all still relevant towards mealtime, and there is still the social distancing recommendations for mealtime. So if your center was one that would all eat lunch together, then you know your groups are going to have lunch on their own with as much social distancing as possible. Okay, number 4, do children need to wear buffs or face masks on the playground?
The guidance that I got from CDPHE is that the face coverings are only a recommendation and that individual programs can determine what seems appropriate for their children. So you guys can decide for yourselves whether you think that your kid should be wearing face masks on the playground.
What about teachers? Is that something that absolutely has to happen all the time?
Yes.
Okay, Katie or Janet, anything on face masks on the playground?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about like determining the appropriateness of face masks for kids. Just, not everybody might be comfortable with that, but if a child is, touching or messing with their face mask a lot, it's really not serving its purpose, and they're potentially, I'm so sorry, spreading more germs. So if you have a kid that just can't leave their face mask alone, then that probably isn't appropriate for them. And there might be an adjustment period for sure. It's a huge change, but it can be determined on a kid by kid basis if it's appropriate or not. They're encouraging the use, but realistically, we know 3-year-olds probably aren't going to do so well with it. So yeah, you can make a decision on a kid by kid basis, but it is required for teachers.
And it's also recommended for 3 and up. I think I had put a sample question in the doc of, do my 2-year-olds need to wear masks all day? And the age range recommended for kids wearing masks at centers are 3 years and up. So your toddlers and 2s and your babies, we're just going to focus on proper hand washing and sanitizing and that sort of typical procedures that we do in infant toddler classrooms to cut down on spread of common cold and other diseases. So I need to wear Bob. So what is the procedure for giving back children's winter clothes and other items that were left at school prior to the shutdown?
I think that if the clothes have been at the facility since before the shutdown, they've been sitting out long enough that they're not a contamination risk. But I'm not sure if the question's about the risk of the items or the risk of contact with the parents or.
Yeah, is someone able to clarify, is that contact from the clothing or how to safely distribute items?
I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, when we give them back to the parents, should it be in a Ziploc? Should we allow them to stay at the school? Just how to go about having those clothes there and how to bring them back to the families.
I think that people can just pick them up, or you can set them out or arrange with them. I don't think you need to make super special procedures for that. If they don't need to be at the center, they should probably be sent home to reduce the amount of items that can be contaminated or cluttering or whatnot. Does anyone else have insight on that?
I think it's just going to be a center by center contact information, leaving things out front for parents or, but I definitely recommend sending them home when possible and having parents pick them up at staggered times so we can keep, not everybody is coming at once.
Amanda, my suggestion and what I plan on doing is putting each of the children who are not coming back, their things are going to go into I have paper bags and I can give you some if you need them. I'm going to put their name on it and set it on the front porch and then contact those parents to come pick it up. Does that help?
Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Allison.
All right, so those are the 5 questions from our sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to people who are on the call now and any questions that might have come up in the meantime.
And this is Lene. I have a question. I have read quite a few different things, but could someone clarify the amount of time a hard surfaced item needs to kind of sit out to guarantee lack of exposure to the virus? And I know that's maybe not as cut and dry as I would like for it to be, but I've read everything from 3 days to 7 days and
2 weeks.
Yeah, it depends on the surface and it also depends on the environment. if you're concerned that the surface has been contaminated with COVID-19, it should be disinfected with the chemical disinfectant.
And there's also recommendations for including things that weren't typically disinfected, like light switches and doorknobs, frequently touched hard surfaces need to be included in your cleaning schedule. And I think where it gets a little muddy is with that playground equipment and things being outside. Those are still hard surfaces, but they're not typically daily disinfected daily. And I know there was questions around, do we need to do that in between each group? And it seems like sun exposure decreases the time it can live on a surface. So as far as outside and harder surfaces, it's, you know, limiting your groups out there and making sure you can still have the social distancing.
Correct. The state is not recommending cleaning or disinfecting outdoor equipment, just that you use good hand hygiene, hand washing after playing outside, and then just not mixing those group of children still.
It sounds like cardboard blocks should be put away too, right? Cardboard is like horrible transmission, right?
Unless you have them covered in plastic that you can disinfect.
Is there a list of things we need to put away? Right now I have dress up clothes, stuffies, and cardboard blocks. Is there anything else recommended?
I haven't found a specific item list on that COVID-19 Colorado Safer at Home site. There are recommendations for toys that cannot be sanitized or disinfected. So they specifically mention soft toys and dress-up clothes, but outside of that, there isn't really a specific list. It's things that you can't, like softer surfaces, from my understanding. Katie, do you know if there's a specific recommendation for those things? Okay.
I haven't heard of a specific list. That wouldn't be coming from licensing, though. That would be coming from
CDC.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a general guidance that if it's difficult or impossible to clean and disinfect, then it should be removed. And that if it's easy to clean and disinfect, then you can leave it there. The general guidance is to remove the number of toys, so it's not like zillions and zillions of toys that have to be cleaned every day, and just having like a reasonable amount that are easily cleanable.
And being able to rotate those through so that if they're all out in your environment, then we're gonna have to pull all of them and clean them versus having kind of like a clean set and a set that's out that you're gonna be pulling and cleaning, so that there's enough toys for kids to continue to engage in meaningful play, but you're not constantly cleaning toys all day. Kristen, I see do you have a question?
Yeah, going back to the outside toys and items, what are your thoughts on bicycles? And kids riding bikes and the cleaning and disinfecting of helmets and things like that. What do you guys recommend? Just
Do children have their own helmets, or they share?
Right now they're shared helmets. But I mean, some of them are, I don't know, they're kind of foamy and maybe hard to clean. I was just wondering what your thoughts.
Yeah, what Adaptive Sports does is they have a spray disinfectant made for cleaning helmets that they spray all their equipment after children. It's probably a good idea to do something like that. That should be a general. That's not specific to COVID-19. That's probably a more general everyday rule. But yeah, they become visibly soiled.
Okay.
Around the face.
Okay.
With the bikes, it's just gonna be good hand washing.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Did you have anything about that, Corinne?
I didn't. I was curious to see what you were going to say. But just keeping in mind, like having the kid's own helmet and just really being aware of that cross-contamination time. I actually, because when you mentioned bikes, I was like, oh, bikes should be fine, but then helmets are a little more challenging. And I actually didn't know there was a specific helmet disinfectant spray. So we learn something new every day. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, they have specific adaptive is I got to learn a lot because they have specific products for helmets. They have specific products for like ski boots. It's a lot of like rental equipment type stuff. But it would be best, Kristen, if kids had their own helmets.
Okay.
And then they should just be washed down with like a soapy rag if they get visibly soiled.
Okay.
But if they're sharing, they need to be cleaned and disinfected between kids.
Right. That's cool. Do you happen to know are you okay if we use like a sanitation spray in between each kid? Would you prefer like a 3-step process? Or do you happen to know the name of the disinfectant they use at Adaptive?
I don't offhand. I could maybe reach out to them and see if they have a thing. Normally, I would say a sanitizer would probably be fine. But since we're talking about facial viruses right now, I think something that's going to be effective against the virus will be important.
Okay. So maybe like a disinfectant and a rinse. Do you want to?
I'm going to write it down and look into it more for you.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question. We have committed to taking our shoes off outside and having school shoes. I keep saying that we will sanitize those school shoes, but is a Lysol spray appropriate? Is it a bleach wipe down? Any ideas on how to sanitize shoes?
I don't have any specific guidance for sanitizing shoes. I think that if they have their indoor shoes and their outdoor shoes, that it might not be necessary. Sounds like it might be extra work. I think your sanitizer bleach solution might be fine. I don't know. What do you think, Corinne?
I would say if you're leaving them in a specific area and they're not leaving that area, I don't see it as being an issue to have to sanitize on top of that, unless you're not confident they're confined to the school or center, or you think maybe there's been a chance for some of that. But yeah, I think sanitizing the inside shoes would be an extra step. But if you're not switching shoes at the door, then some sort of covering or sanitation before you enter the building would be important.
What about going outside on our playground? Are they going outside with their shoes from home or their shoes from school?
Ooh, good question.
That is a tough one.
Did the shoe guidance come internally, or is this did someone else suggest this be part of the procedures? Is this from CDPAG or someone else, or?
No, it's kind of just been in national webinars, a recommendation from childcare centers that have been open throughout this response time. So we're just, I think Ben was the first, we added it from a webinar that we had watched, and seems valid with research showing that the virus may be tracked on the bottoms of shoes, and just limiting the cross-contaminations of multiple environments, so we can kind of control that a little bit. But yeah, the plan is just that they come with an extra pair of shoes to leave. To speak to Jess's question, Jess, I was planning on tenderfoot kids to wear their school shoes on our playground, since it's only our playground, and then outside shoes will be left outside the door. If they're gonna go on, and I know tenderfoot's different for this because we have campus, but if they go on any walks, they'll wear their outside shoes. And that's pretty easy to commit to because there's nobody on campus right now. So field trips won't be in any public places, but a quick walk or over to our green grassy field we can manage.
I think that sounds great, Linnea. I think this sounds more like a best practice that you guys are committing to, which I think is wonderful. But yeah, I think you're indoor, outdoor. I don't think you need to overcomplicate it, make your lives any more difficult than they're already going to be.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I would see the playground as just an extension of your property, you know, your center. So that wouldn't be that cross contamination from outside versus in. Great, thank you. Any other questions?
I've got another one.
Go for it. That's what we're here for.
All right. Okay, so going and cleaning up all of our nap stuff. So if a teacher's cleaning up nap stuff, so they clean up one child's nap stuff, do they need to wear gloves and take off the gloves and go and wash their hands in between each kid and each nap? How specific do we need to be for like cross-contamination when it comes to putting away nap stuff? So if a teacher puts away one cot, do they need to go wash their hands and come and put away another cot and go and wash their hands and put another cot away? What are your thoughts on this process?
I would think yes, that they would have to wash hands in between each bedding thing. I don't know if it would be appropriate to have each child help clean up their bedding to kind of reduce some of that, but
okay,
you know the abilities of your kiddos, not. But and then another thing is like the bedding needs. I'm sure you know that it needs to be stored separately, like each kiddo's stuff in its own separate container or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think they would need to wash their hands in between each.
Okay.
Set of bedding.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm not muted. Sorry.
We can't hear you, Corinne.
Oh, I was pausing to see if anybody else had a question before I added. I'm curious with do you need to wash these daily, like the bedding for nap?
No, if the same child is using it every day, it can be washed weekly. But if it's going to be used by a different child, it would need to be washed before then. But if it's used by the same child every day, once a week is okay.
Okay. All right. So, do you have any more questions? I didn't see anything about drop off or screenings. I want to make sure we're all pretty clear on the guidance around, you know, parents dropping off and picking up and washing hands when they enter the facility, or at least having a hand sanitizer around for that.
My question is kind of along those lines. So you're doing your health check, the kid's pretty healthy, and then a big gust of wind comes in and all of a sudden they are just full of seasonal allergies and sneezy and snotty and rubbing their eyes. What do we send that kid home for seasonal allergies? What do we do with this really nasty, gross, snotty kid?
This is a super hard question, and it's a super hard time of year. So really, my gut is to just at least in this stage, we're going to keep it simple. Anybody experiencing any kind of sickness symptoms needs to be sent home, just since we're at the very beginning of this reopening stage in our county. I worry if, you know, there's too many little different nuances, you know, that it gets confusing, and then it's like, well, I kept this kid, but they were sneezing and I thought they were fine, and then they ended up being sick. I don't want something like that to happen.
Okay.
So I think just for simplicity and safety in this first stage that anybody showing any signs of sickness should be sent home. And if you can encourage, if your parents know their kid has seasonal allergies, maybe medicate them before with allergy medicine so that they aren't having those symptoms at school. Same with sorry Jess, I never answered your question about the teething babies, but yeah, same thing with teething babies. If they're have a fever with that, then they'll need to be sent home, even though it's most likely just because they're teething. I think just keeping it simple right now and having clear-cut lines of who stays, who goes is important.
What about staff? Because I know I'm getting hit pretty hard with them. And
Oh yeah, I've been a sneezing mess lately. The same would go for staff as well. So
okay.
I know it's hard and it's kind of blurry. If the fever is a clear, cut line, the sneezing isn't actually like a symptom on the tracking log or a symptom of COVID. So just if you have allergies, take allergy medicine. That way, hopefully, you won't be sneezing and stuff at school. But really, the symptoms that we need to follow would be fever over 100.4, coughing, headache, body aches, feeling feverish, or having chills are kind of like the main big symptoms that if anybody has those, they need to go home right away or not.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's children and staff, correct, that are exhibiting any sort of symptoms that are on that reopening list. Thank you, Janet. So Katie, I'm wondering if there have been, I know there hasn't been a whole lot of significant changes in licensing, but I'm just wondering if there's been anything that you'd like us to know that we haven't touched on so far from the licensing side of things, ratios, group size, same kids, that sort of thing.
Another thing that I was just thinking about was just certifications. Any certifications that you can do online, make sure you do not get those expired. Anything that requires face-to-face, in-person certifications, we are giving a little leeway on that. So if it expired, first aid, CPR, or med admin expired March 1st or sooner, then you have 120 days to take that class. Otherwise, make sure you're keeping up on things like standard precautions, all those kinds of certifications, and don't let those expire. Otherwise, just keep it.
Sorry, Katie. I have a question about the standard precautions on PDIS. Is that now like the official course, or is that just kind of a Band-Aid until we can reconvene in larger groups? Or
yeah, that actually came out in January, I want to say, and it's something that the state's offering now as an official course that you can take. I don't see it coming down at all because it wasn't because of COVID that it came up. It was just because there was a need for standard precautions. So now you have it on PDIS.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my understanding now that there was a small fee with it before, but I think that's currently being, no? Okay.
If there was a fee before, I'm not sure.
Not there.
Or, yeah, I didn't deal with that, but PDIS, it's free online.
Okay, perfect. Awesome.
And there's also the CPR first aid module online, which would be a good thing to take if you do have an expired CPR first aid, just so you have something.
Right, and then we're just waiting for the in-person test for the CPR, and you don't have to do the whole course. So it gives you a jump start. Okay, thank you, Katie. All right, any other questions? Group size, drop off, cleaning, additional resources? So we're coming up to play our last 5 minutes together. And I'm gonna put my email in the chat here. If you guys, if we get off this call and immediately you're like, I had 3 questions and I forgot. So feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email if that happens, and I can help you out. For those of you who don't have my email, it's there in the chat. And I did record most of this question and answer session to send out to people who weren't able to call in today, or maybe missed some of the conversation. And I guess real quick before we go, just remember our hand washing procedures. If you need posters, let me know. If you need diapering procedures, let me know. Those were all created to reduce the spread of disease, so they're all still very relevant right now. And just being hyper vigilant with our policies, procedures, making sure we know what they are and our parents understand and know, and we're giving kids a safe place.
I have a quick question about exclusion from, like, some of the times are a little bit different than the new public order says on your thing, Janet, with like closing for, I changed it on my policy that if someone gets sick, we close for 24 hours. And it says on your thing 72, but also just like, what is that? So if anybody gets symptoms of it.
Oh, you're breaking up, Jess.